My name is Lisa, mother of 7 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. All right, welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today I'm going to be doing a pregnancy, birth, and baby Q&A. I am currently at the end of my pregnancy with baby number 8. So I'm 37 weeks as I'm recording this, but I believe I'm more like 39-ish whenever this comes out. And I haven't really created a whole lot of pregnancy content throughout this pregnancy. Actually, I haven't created any at all. And I get lots of questions. And I feel like I've already done it. In past pregnancies, I've made Q&As. I've done a couple of updates or like what I'm buying for the baby, minimalist baby essentials and all of this stuff. And I pretty much parent the exact same way that I did whenever I first came on YouTube, which was when I was pregnant with my 5th. So we have been through 4 pregnancies together now. And I just have kind of avoided the subject other than like there'll be a birth story. And for every baby, I do a birth story because we have our babies at home. But I thought that here on the podcast would be a good place to just answer some Q&A. So I have a little list of questions that I asked over on Instagram a couple weeks ago. And I'm just going to dive into the ones that seem interesting or hopefully what you want to know. And I was debating on going back in the house because I just recorded an episode with Abby from M is for Mama. And I'm recording these back to back because we're getting way ahead of the podcast before the baby comes so that I can take like a full blown break. But it's so hot out here because in this cottage, it's temperature controlled. Like we have heating in here, but the AC, we need to, I think, get another unit. It's just not doing it. And it's 99 degrees. Yes, 99 degrees right now. So I was debating on going back in. But Theo is napping. I have him here on my monitor and I don't want him to wake up when I come in the house. I'm already all set up. I have my mic, I have my camera. So let's just dive into some of these questions. Oh, let's just start with a bang. I know this is super loaded, but with this being your 8th, can you say yet if you will have more kids? So that has been something that actually Abby and I were talking off script or off the mic afterwards. And this is always, for whatever reason, this is a difficult question for me to answer because we have been very open-handed about the whole kid thing all throughout our marriage. And we have just never felt, I've just never felt like I'm ready to close that chapter. Now, of course, I'm 37 years old. And so that chapter will close whether I like it or not. But at the moment, I mean, if the Lord does bless us with another child, we will take the child. It has just been, I don't know. I love the newborn stage. I love going through all the stages. I like creating a large family culture and, there's definitely parts of that are difficult, but then there's parts of it that I feel like I have a unique perspective to get to witness that you don't get a lot, which I'm sure, if you have a small family, you get that unique perspective. So all that to say, I guess we'll just see, but I am getting up there in age. So I know that we won't have 10 more kids. That's for sure. Maybe we'll see. Okay. I'd love to hear your birth stories. Natural, home birth, do you prepare with exercise? So as far as birth goes, we had our first 2 babies in the hospital. This is just what was available to us. Well, okay, my first child, I didn't think about it at all. There wasn't Instagram, there wasn't Facebook. I mean, you could get information, you could get books. I didn't really know that I should have prepared in any way. I just assumed I would just go into the hospital at 40 weeks and have the baby, which is what I did. But it ended up having a lot of the interventions that I did not, looking back and after reading, figuring out that a lot of the interventions is what made it not a great birth experience. So I went in, I was definitely in labor based on the contractions, based on how many centimeters dilated I was. And I was given Pitocin. I had no idea that I should not speed it up. They broke my water. I did the IV antibiotics because of group B strep. We did forceps, episiotomy, all of it. And I just did not know to be prepared. And I know as a mom today, especially if you've only had babies in the last 3 or 5 years, you can't imagine that it wouldn't have at least been on your radar to research some of this stuff, because we live in an information age where you gather information for everything. I mean, before a birth, you'll probably listen to, 50 birth podcasts and read books, and maybe you'll take a birth course. None of that was available. Literally, all I had at the age of 22 when I was pregnant with my first was a What to Expect When You're Expecting book, which I now know is like a no-go. And just the information from, friends and family who in my circles never did natural birth. And so it was just kind of like, yeah, you'll probably go in and get induced. And I didn't really know that there were downsides to that. So all that to say, I did like a very typical birth with my first. I did the epidural, I did the Pitocin, I did the water breaking, the episiotomy, the heart rate dips down to 20. Oh my, she's dying. You're on oxygen, the whole thing. And, ultimately I had my baby girl and everything was fine. For the second, I completely changed course. I read Ina May. I read the Bradley natural childbirth book. I just got as much information as I possibly could. This was still before you had influencers and podcasts sharing information, but I had real life people. There was a lady at my church at the time who had 12 home births. And so I asked her what I should read, and she's the one who sent those books my way. I practiced the Bradley method every single night from about 20 weeks pregnant. I learned how to do the Bradley position if you aren't familiar. It's a position designed to help you get in a relaxed state so that way you can do natural birth. So I prepared a ton. I did not want to repeat the experience I had with my first, going in completely blind, just thinking I will do what they tell me to do and then I'll have the baby, even though that totally works. And I know some people are like, well, I've done that and it's worked out great. I just, I had the epidural. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't have episiotomy. The baby just came out. That can happen, but in my experience, it turned into a disaster. I will also mention that my first had a true knot in her cord, and so her heart rate was decelerating, or whatever the word that is. And so it just was like all kinds of scary moments. But now with a lot of the research that I've done, I've realized that the cocktail of Pitocin and epidural, it did not help her heart rate. It wasn't all the knot in the cord, because my fourth ended up having a true knot as well, which is supposed to be like a 1 in 100 scenario. And clearly if I had it happen twice, either it really is that rare and it's just a weird thing that happened to me, or it's not that rare. But nonetheless, he was born at home and everything was totally fine, not scary at all. So I just, with the experience of my first being so traumatic, so scary, I wasn't going to repeat that. I ended up having my second in the hospital with no epidural, just like a natural birth in the hospital. The reason that we hadn't yet chosen to go home or a birth center is, one, there wasn't a birth center available, and two, insurance didn't cover it. And it just, I guess I wasn't ready to fully branch out of that system just yet. My third I had in the car. And so then, and so that was obviously another natural birth. So then 4, 5, 6, and 7 I had at home. So other than the first, I have been a birth researcher, a practicer of the Bradley method, and Lord willing, that is what will happen again with number 8. So we are planning a home birth. I'm having the same midwife that I had for Theo, which was my baby number 7. My births have been, outside of the first one, have been very easy. I do the Bradley method. I basically train myself to relax deeply. I don't do swaying and rocking. I mean, I'm up and doing things all the way up until the contractions get really strong. And then I'm just laying in bed like I'm asleep and riding each wave in a relaxed way. And I've been blessed with very easy births. They've all been pushing like 2 or 3 times. And I would even go as far as to say with Theo's, I was able to relax so much that it was very, very intense and very powerful, but I wouldn't call it painful. So I'm hoping to repeat that, but even if it was like any of my births 2 through 7, I would be happy to repeat that. I want to take a break from this episode to tell you about the School of Traditional Skills. The Homesteading family, you may have heard of them if you follow along with them over on YouTube, has a ton of knowledge to share through their YouTube channel, but they also created this amazing resource called the School of Traditional Skills, where they go to these experts' homes or farms and create professional videos sharing something that is a skill that is necessary for simple living, homesteading, from scratch cooking. Some examples are homestead planning, that's a new one they just added, pressure canning, reclaiming pasture, raising pastured meat chickens, back to Eden gardening style. They did a class with me on fermenting vegetables. They have garden season extension, curing pork, so many things. I'm not going to read through all of these because there's so many. And I actually just got an email from them that they were shooting a cheese making and dairy class. I'm really excited for that. They're adding new classes all the time, and you can get access to all of these skills, these very professional style videos that teach you things that if you're listening to this podcast, you likely want to know. Maybe not all of them. You can pick and choose. I've watched through some I feel like I already kind of know, some I feel like I'm not currently interested in knowing. Like cheese making, I'm just now interested in that. But for so long, I want to learn nourishing bone broths with Sally Fallon, and then moving on from there. You can check out the School of Traditional Skills through my link, bit.ly/farmhouse skills, and see if it would be a fit for you, if that's something that you are looking to learn some of these skills very in depth from experts. Head on over again to bit.ly/farmhouse skills. Okay, did you find out gender? We did. We've only found out 3 of the 8 times. So we found out the first 2 times when we had our girls, and then we didn't find out 5 times. And this time I just wanted to find out. I didn't see any reason to wait an additional 4 or 5 months for just, I don't know. I wanted to prepare myself because we, of course, love all of our children. The gender is totally not up to me, but of course there's always all through the pregnancy, maybe this is a girl, and the older girls are excited to maybe find out if it's going to be a girl. And I just didn't want to go through the entire pregnancy this time thinking like maybe it's a girl and like thinking of a girl name and a boy name whenever it's just the last 5 times it's been a boy. So I just wanted to find out early that it was a boy. I was already sure it was a boy. I just wanted to find out early that it was a boy. So it is a boy. So we've now had 2 girls in a row and then 6 boys in a row. And my daughter keeps saying, well, maybe the ultrasound was wrong. And I told her, a lot of times, babies can like hide, and it could be very, maybe the ultrasound is wrong. This wasn't like that. The baby made it very clear. And so it is a boy. It's definitely a boy. Now, in my pregnancies with the last 3, maybe 2, I didn't do an ultrasound. This time, I really, for my own mental state, I just really felt like I wanted to know that it was a boy. So I don't really know if I can explain it. I know there are good reasons to avoid ultrasound. I know that there are good reasons to not avoid ultrasound. And that's a very controversial topic, but I will say that this time we chose to do the anatomy scan, and we did find out that we're having another little boy. How are you doing this pregnancy? Has it been different? This pregnancy has been very, very easy. And you know what? I have easy pregnancies in general. I have the first 14-ish weeks where I'm tired. I feel nauseated. It's even that, though, is a lot of times very back and forth. Like sometimes I feel fine, sometimes I don't. This time was definitely like that. Like I did not feel terrible the entire first trimester. I didn't feel great, but it just, first trimester, I do know some people who feel great during it. I don't ever feel great during it, but I also don't have the kind of first trimester where you have to like quit everything you're doing because you're throwing up all day. Thankfully, I don't have that. I just have where I feel a little bit blah, but I can go along with my normal day for the most part, maybe slightly less activity because I am, a little more tired and nauseated. And then the rest of the pregnancy has just been easy. I haven't really had anything to complain about. My tailbone hurts. That's one thing that I've always had where I think I think it's the relaxin, like stuff loosens up during pregnancy and it makes it to where like things like that can hurt. So my tailbone hurts if I have to sit very long. I drove to Nashville in April and my tailbone really hurt during that, but that's probably the extent of my concerns. I do have varicose veins. I got the varicose veins on my third pregnancy and they've never gone away. They don't hurt though. They look very bad. They don't look great. In shorts, I have like these very messed up legs, or one leg actually, just one. But this time they haven't hurt at all. They just look bad. So I really can't complain there. I just truly like I don't have really any complaints this pregnancy. I'm at the end, so I would say like they're probably still coming, but I don't sleep fabulously. I wake up a lot to go to the bathroom. And so I try to allot more hours for sleeping. That way, with all the interruptions, it still adds up to a decent amount. But that is probably the biggest complaint I have is I don't sleep great. How's your iron levels this time? Honestly, my midwife never checked my iron levels this time. I am taking iron, and I know that is another controversial thing, but I have learned that I probably should have done something to correct my iron deficiencies before getting pregnant. But once I'm in the thick of it, once I'm pregnant, I can't avoid it. And I've done things like making my own tinctures out of nettle. Gosh, what are all the herbs? Burdock root. There was a whole host of herbs that with my second child, I made tinctures. I took Floridix. I did liver. I even chopped up raw liver and swallowed it every single day with my second and third pregnancies and ended up so iron deficient. And whenever I take iron, I don't have that happen. And I know there's a scientific explanation for it. I'm sure. I just feel better and like I can get through pregnancy if I take iron, even though there's probably natural ways that I should be doing this. I feel that I've tried all those things and then I've ended up having just issues. Like basically my first clue is if I crave ice, I'm iron deficient, and it's very closely tied. So I haven't checked my iron this time, but there's been times when I start to crave ice and then I take my iron and I'm good to go again. And so I've just embraced it at this point. I feel like I have to do it because if I don't do it, I will end up super fatigued. My second child, who I was very iron deficient on, which is the one where I made all the tinctures and ate all the liver, she ended up being really small. And all my other boys, all the ones after that, were all 8.5 pounds. And I just took the iron. And so I guess I'm just justifying myself to say my iron's probably not great and I'm taking iron. So there you go. Have you had problems with bad varicose veins? Any tips? I have. And I don't have any tips. I mean, they look terrible. They haven't hurt though. If I take magnesium, it really helps. In your opinion, is trying to have a baby in your early to mid 40s crazy? I haven't done that yet, but I don't think so. I know lots of people who do who have sweet babies from it. Do you do any prep work to prevent tearing? So I haven't really struggled with that. And my babies, I push out really fast. And I've heard on various natural birthing stories that you should not push, like you shouldn't push. You should just let the baby come out. That way it's nice and slow and gentle. And I don't do that at all. I push like a crazy person. I get the baby out in like 30 seconds. And I did tear a little on my seventh, but it didn't require any stitches. So I've actually only torn with the 2 that I had in the hospital. And I think that was just because I couldn't get in the right position. And I forgot to mention, my first 2 were both posterior. So I tore with them, but then all 5 of my boys who've been born at home, I did not, except for I did tear a little with Theo, and it was on my episiotomy scar from 15 years ago, or at the time, I guess it was like 13 years ago. It didn't require any stitches. It healed on its own, and I don't do anything to prevent it. I probably should. Tips for dealing with afterbirth pain. Do yours get worse after each child like mine do? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. They are so bad. I have worse afterbirth pains than labor, I would say. I mean, I feel like with labor, if I relax fully, I can ride the wave and like get through it. But then whenever I'm having my afterbirth pains, the Bradley method doesn't even work. Like it just tightens it just gets like a rock, like a rock. I don't know. It's so bad. I learned with my seventh, so with Theo, a friend of mine told me that she had read if you only drink warm drinks, no cold drinks throughout the postpartum healing time, that it majorly prevents the afterbirth pains. And it did help a lot. I also took the tincture. Oh, what's it called? I think it's called After Ease. I need to order that. That actually, thanks for the reminder. I need to order that right now. Also, I do heat pads. So I always have heat pads and I just push them in against my uterus whenever I'm having the afterbirth pains. I do deal with a lot of postpartum pain. I deal with afterbirth pains and I deal with nursing pain every time. And I know that means the latch is bad. Be that as it may, it happens every time. And the baby nurse is fine. I've never had to supplement with the bottle. So nursing's always worked, but it for the first 2 weeks is just excruciatingly painful between the nursing and then the afterbirth pains. So this time my plan going in is for the warm drinks only, the After Ease tincture, I believe it's called, and the heating pads. That's my solution. And it did help. With the third or fourth, I tried taking Tylenol. It doesn't even touch it. So it's not even worth taking, I've learned. But those other tips really did help. Favorite postpartum food, meal prep tips. So my favorite postpartum food is whatever people bring me. I am blessed to have family and have a church community. So the first person to show up is always my sister Laura. She has the YouTube Our Oily House and the blog ouroilyhouse.com. She's been on the podcast a few times. She's always the first to show up because with like meal trains with church, people don't like drop what they're doing and come over the day you have the baby, but you also do kind of need a meal that day. And my sister Laura shows up with whatever meal that might be, whether it's morning and it needs to be breakfast and lunch, or if it's, mid-morning needs to be lunch and dinner. And then my mom usually shows up with some groceries. And then like, I think with Theo, she brought over a rotisserie chicken, just something you can eat real easy. And then I have church family that brings like a meal train meal. So I have done in the past some freezer meals, but I'm not going to get to that this time. So I'm just either my sister's going to show up again, which I'm sure she will, and either church will have a meal train. And if worst case scenario, I have a husband who's home full time, which is great. And I have older kids now. So a lot of times at the very least, I like to just have everything stocked. So I will have groceries stocked, make sure I have plenty of cheese and salami and all of the like butter so you can make a lot of eggs, and just have the pantry and the kitchen stocked so that there are easy to grab things for people in the family. All right, I want to take a break to tell you about today's podcast sponsor, Tubes & Co. Tubes & Co. is an organic skincare company. They have everything from face masks. I just saw on their website that they have a brand new face mask they just launched, to face creams like moisturizers and serums. I especially love their glow serum, to makeup. So I currently have on the Tubes & Co. foundation, the Tubes & Co. eye pencil with their little brush thing that makes it really easy to do eyebrows, the mascara. I'm trying to think of what else I have on here. I own a lot more of their items if I ever want to do the whole contouring palette thing. And occasionally I do that, but most of the time I just stick with the basics for a fresh face that I don't have to worry about all of the junk in makeup. This has been a saga for me over the years because I know that what goes onto our skin actually makes its way in and it affects our health. But a lot of the products that are natural just aren't very good. And like currently right now I'm pregnant and I have the, whatever it's called when you get the mask, and I want coverage. I want to use the concealers and the foundations that are at conventional places, but I don't want the chemicals. Tubes & Co. completely solves that problem for me. I've sent all my friends and family their way. I love that it's a small family-owned company. They use all great ingredients. You can check them out, look through them all. They use tallow from grass-fed cows and just all things that I'm very comfortable putting on my skin and in my body. Tubes & Co. is offering Simple Farmhouse Life listeners 10% off your order if you want to check it out, whether you're in the need for makeup or something to moisturize or cleanse, by using the code FARMHOUSE. So go to tubesandco.com and use the code FARMHOUSE to get 10% off your order and check out some awesome Tubes & Co. products. Okay. Were your boy and girl pregnancies any different? So for me, no. Then again, it's been 15 and 13 years since I've had girls. Well, 14 and a half and 12 and a half. And pregnancies, of course, were 15 and 13 years ago. And it's really hard for me to know with the first time of anything, you're more hyper aware of what's going on because it's so new. So you're noticing every little symptom. You're thinking about it a lot because, when you're having your first and second baby, not that you're not always excited. I mean, you're always excited, but that's going to be a major life change. Whereas going from 7 to 8, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, yes, it's a life change. It's going to be an adjustment, but it's not the same kind of experience that going from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2. And so in some ways, I feel like I was more tired and more sick with the girls, but then part of me thinks I was just more hyper aware of what was going on. And so I'm really not a credible source because that happened so long ago, so many children ago, that I could just be remembering it a little bit wrong. I know I was nauseated, but my first pregnancy I ever threw up with was actually my 7th. And I wasn't sicker the whole time, but I did have some moments where I threw up. Whereas like with the girls, I felt nauseated, but I never threw up. So I couldn't have been that sick. So I think it really is just more that it was my first 2. I was thinking, and then with my second, I was very tired. And I think I just got way too iron deficient with like trying to not take conventional iron. I had to nap every day. With this one and with all the boys, really, once I get past the first trimester, I don't really experience tiredness. I feel great, like all the way up until I have the baby. So I don't think I've had really any differences between boys and girls. Okay, so do you take any supplements or anything extra to prepare your body for birth? So I take iron, which we've talked about, and magnesium, and I'm haphazard with the magnesium. I take it, and then some days I forget all about it existing. I will be starting during week 38, my Group B strep protocol, which I always hesitate to talk about this topic. So many of you need this information, but it's so controversial that it is hard for me to talk about because I avoid topics like that on my channel. I just do because I don't want to deal with any like medical ramifications of saying the wrong thing. I can tell you that personally, I have a protocol that I do. I do not test for Group B strep, but I have in the past always had it. So I expect that I will have it. And so I have a regimen of garlic, vitamin C, and probiotics that I take leading up to birth just with the assumption that I have it. And that's the approach I've taken with lots of careful consideration and research. But you will need to decide for yourself what kind of route that you want to take with that. I haven't started that yet, but I will. And I even with Theo, I remember because I hadn't tested, but I just assumed I cut up raw cloves of garlic and took them during labor as well. I was like, okay, I'm having the baby today, clearly. So I took a few garlic cloves. Are you nursing on demand or by schedule? So I'm a on-demand nurser. That's what I've done with all of my kids. It's worked out really well. I co-sleep for about 6 months at least, some kids longer. And then usually about 6 months, they start getting really restless. They don't sleep as well. And we start to transition to the crib. I talked about that more on the podcast I did with Ariel Tyson. If you're curious, because I get the question so often, how do you go from co-sleeping, baby wearing to napping in the crib and sleeping in their crib? And I will say it's not always the smoothest transition, but it works pretty quick. And some of you aren't going to like my answer, but I did talk about that on my podcast with Ariel Tyson. But for the first 6 months, yeah, we'll just nurse all day, put in the baby carrier, sleep in my bed, nurse all night, and address the whole schedule thing later. Where will your kids be while you give birth? So we've moved 45 minutes away from where our nearest family member lives in the last 4 years. So I've now had 2 babies in our farmhouse. This will be the 3rd baby born in our farmhouse. And so it's not super possible to get somebody over here to watch the kids really fast. Actually, my sister has since moved here, so I could possibly get her over here. But what we did with the last 2 births, they were born at 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. And the 9 a.m. one, we're just here. And Luke, we do my blog and my podcast and my YouTube channel full time. So Luke's always here, which is a major advantage, I understand, in so many ways. So he's here. And if I wanted him in there with me, obviously we'd need a little extra help, but we also have older kids. So with that, we didn't have anybody here when Daniel was born, except for Luke was here. And we just called him upstairs whenever I was pushing, which I'm I like to be alone when I'm in labor. Even I don't like anybody with me at all. I don't like my midwife there. I don't want a doula. It's just how I like to do. I like to just get into my relaxed state and get through the whole thing. And then I like Luke to be in the room when I'm pushing the baby out, for obvious reasons. But they were here. I don't have kids in my room. I don't have them watch the birth. That's really not something we've even really talked about. I don't know if my older kids would even want to see that or not. But so far, that has not been something we've done. They've been in the house during the births, but not in the room. And Luke usually comes in whenever I'm pushing. So that's how we did it too. Now, the most recent baby was born at 10 at night. So Luke and I were the only ones awake. Well, there was kids still awake, but they were just in their rooms. And then they came down to see the baby afterwards. Okay, what would you tell your first time pregnant self? I would 100% tell my first time pregnant self to get information. And honestly, this probably goes without saying if you are a 2023 mom, you're going to get information because we have information, like almost too much information. But I would tell myself to read Natural Childbirth, The Bradley Way by Susan McCutcheon, Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth, and if you're really feeling like bonus points, Childbirth Without Fear by Dick Grantley Reed. I believe that's the name. Read those books and prepare yourself with positive birth stories, no horror stories, and just know that you have options. You don't have to do all the things you're told. You can learn for yourself. Either that is possible for you to do. You have the power to learn things for yourself. And again, I'm telling this to my 2008 self who had a baby, whereas we know that now. We know now that you don't have to, you can advocate for yourself. You can learn on your own. And, what a doctor says isn't the final answer. We know that these days, but so different back then. So I would tell myself to research. Don't just go into this without you knowing anything. You are an active participant in this deal. And it's very important that you take that seriously. Do you test for gestational diabetes? I do not. I haven't done that test this time. I believe I did it with the first 6, but I have not done it this time. In fact, this time I've done nothing other than the ultrasound. I haven't done any of the tests this time. Although when my midwife, she came today, she measures, she takes the heart rate with the fetoscope. She does blood pressure. We do the urine test to check for protein, I believe, in the urine. Testing for certain things can help you to know if you're experiencing any signs of serious pregnancy complications like preeclampsia. We do those things. But I've always had 0 signs of having gestational diabetes. I've never had any markers come up throughout any of my pregnancies. And so there are certain things with an 8th child, and of course things can always be different. So I don't want to say that they can't, but there are certain patterns you get in. I know my iron will be low. I know I'm going to have group B strep. At least unless something changes, I'm not going to have any issues with blood pressure or gestational diabetes or sugars in any way. So those are things that I have these certain patterns. And again, things can change, but we assess certain things like my midwife and I just based on history and other risk factors. Do we have a list of names or do you wait to meet the baby first? So we have been the worst namers of babies. We just tend to not really talk about it till the baby's born. And then we usually, well, the last couple, it's been several days, if not up to a week before we have a name. I believe this time we actually do have it down to 3 names. And that's probably the advantage of finding out that it's a boy is being able to narrow down the name choices. My husband, there are a few names that he has been loving for many, many babies that I've, for whatever reason, never really loved. And I'm warming up to some of them this time. So I think we're going to be going with one of his names this time. And that's not to say like, I hate the name. I'm just letting him name the child. No, I just really feel at peace this time with him choosing one of these names that haven't been like the top of my list, but he's loved consistently. And let's face it, we have 5 boys. My sister has 5 boys. And then, so I feel like a lot of the names that were on my list are, they're used and that's fine. We do have some names, but I'm not probably going to share it just yet because I don't 100% know, but we will have a name a lot sooner this time. Probably when my birth story goes up, I'll have a name. Whereas in the last couple kids, I have this nameless child and people accuse me in the comments of withholding it. Like, you definitely know the name. You're just not saying it. And really, truly, we did not know the name. We were very indecisive for all of our boys. How long did you nurse your babies and do you let them wean by themselves or do you just stop? So I've nursed them all average of, I would say 15 to 18 months. Usually the reason why we stop is not because I'm ready to stop, but because every time I get pregnant, I lose my milk supply, which is really sad, especially this time because this is my closest gap. So all of my kids, it really hasn't been a problem because they're about 2 to 2.5 years apart. This time, Theo won't be 2 until October. And so this is 21 months apart. This is my closest gap. And that means that my milk dried up around 14 months. So it was like maybe 2 months or so after I was pregnant. Does that add up? I think that adds up. So Theo has been weaned for quite a while. It's just my milk completely dried up. I would love to have nursed longer, but that is typically my body's pattern. Once I get pregnant, it ends. Due in 2 weeks and aiming for unmedicated, what do you find works well to manage discomfort? I am a hardcore believer in the Bradley method. My sister and I both, we feel like we have to, my sister Laura, we feel so strongly about this topic, but we've talked about it with so many people and people have opposite strong opinions on that method. So we just have to, between the two of us, enjoy the topic of the Bradley method. We can't get a whole lot of other people on board, though I've had a lot of you reach out and say that you've had your first natural birth and it went so amazing and you loved the Bradley method. So I'll keep speaking about it, but I have a hard time convincing other people like in my real life to do it, to be honest with you. But oh man, we both just believe in it so much because even within the same birth, and okay, I want to step back here a minute. With the Bradley method, it's called the husband coach childbirth. And some of you are probably like, wait a minute, but you said you don't like Luke in there. It's called husband coach childbirth. But I and my sister both, we've adapted it. So we take their little position that they get you in that's designed for optimal relaxation. We have adapted that to doing it in the way that we like. So my way of doing that is getting in that position, learning and practicing how to deeply relax through contractions, not fighting my body. And it's not coached by my husband and same for her. So it's like, okay, are you really doing the Bradley method? Okay, what we do is a version of the Bradley method where you practice and learn how to relax through contractions, which if you haven't had a baby yet, sounds so easy to do. Like, okay, so you just relax. It's not. It's actually really hard to get your body to be in this surrendered state against something so powerful. However, it works incredibly well. And the reason I know is because Within the same labor, I remember this so well with Theo. One contraction, I very imperfectly relax. Like I start to get a little panicky and I experience extreme pain. And then between the break, give myself a pep talk because, every contraction, there's a break between it. And then the next contraction, I'm able to perfectly relax and I experience the same power, but without the pain. And so I tangibly know how much putting this deep relaxation state affects the pain level because I'm in the same labor at the same centimeters. Like with Theo, I decided for a moment that I was going to get in the bathtub because everybody says water is what helps, you to get through a contraction. I got in my bathtub, and now granted, it's not a birth pool. So it was just a cast iron claw foot, not comfortable. So that should have been my first clue not to do that. And I just had like 2 or 3 terrible contractions because I couldn't get in that deeply relaxed state. Sure, I was relaxed. I was sitting there, but I wasn't deeply relaxed. And then I quickly got out and I like ran to the bed before having another one, got in my Bradley method, and then had the same power, but without the pain. And so I'm so fully convinced in my own brain just that it works so incredibly well based on the experiences that I've had. So I'd recommend the Bradley method. Take it for how you will. I know I've seen so many birth stories where the mom is like moaning against the wall, and I just could never endure that while moving like that, because for my body to get fully relaxed, I have to be in my bed, in my little position, thinking through like relaxing everything from my eyelashes down to my toenails. I mean, we're talking like the most minuscule thing. And when I've tried to encourage people, I was telling this to my youngest sister because she's going to be having, Lord willing, her first home birth. She's due a day apart from me very, very soon. I've told her that the cool thing about this is you can totally muff or blow or however you want to look at it. You can totally mess up one contraction. And then you can, and you can experience pain. And then on the next contraction, you can figure out, how to calm and relax yourself and have a great one. And it can be back and forth. It's not an all or nothing thing, because sometimes I think people feel like that with the Bradley method. Like, okay, well, I got to do this, this, and this. And if I don't, I'm gonna have the worst birth ever. You might have bad moments, but it's really nice having that toolkit or in your toolbox, being able to practice and learn how to deeply relax your body. I learned this from a home birth mom of 12, and she told me that she would, like, even when she wasn't pregnant, she would do the relaxation exercises where you like tense up one part of your body, say it's like your eyebrows, and feel what it feels like for that to be tense. And then feel what that feels like for the tension to go away. And she'd do these practice exercises like in her sleep. Like she did them all the time because she was so used to having babies, and she truly had all amazing births. And so that was enough for me to be like, okay, I need to figure this out. And this is just going to turn into a Bradley episode like all birth stuff does for me. Okay. Did I ever have a Bradley coach? I did not. I only ever had the book. And I took seriously the practicing. Now, this time, I haven't taken seriously any practice, but I feel okay with that because I did the same thing with Theo, my last baby. I just felt like, okay, I've already done this a lot. I already know all the relaxation and drills. And then I practiced during my early labor, which really helps. Like during my early labor, I refreshed myself on the exercises. I would not recommend that if it's your first or second natural birth. I would recommend like actually practicing it. But I mean, this time I did not do that, or last time, and it worked out. It's like riding a bike. Okay, I'll just answer a few more. Lots of questions about how I keep up with stuff during the heaviness and tiredness of the third trimester. And I don't struggle too much with the third trimester. It's more just the first. Somebody says, do you still wear your baby for the first 6 months if it's throughout summer and if it's too hot? I have not experienced that. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do that. How do you survive the first trimester with all you have to do? You just have to do less during the first trimester and be okay with it. And it will end, assuming you're not one of those people that stay sick the whole time, which hats off to you. I have no clue how you do that. I always feel better after that. So that's always good. If it's typical and you don't have hyperemesis gravidarum, you should feel better very shortly. What do you do with your placenta? Nothing. I've never been interested in that. I don't know. I probably should look into that, but I've never done anything with it. I believe we donated it to the fire department last time, but no, I don't do anything with it. Ooh, raw milk while pregnant. Yes. And lots of it. It's always my goal to consume at least a quart a day. Sometimes I just forget, or it's finally, bedtime and I've just remembered I need to drink my raw milk, and I won't do that because then I'll be up all night going to the bathroom. So I try not to drink a ton right before bed, but yes, lots of raw milk. I've done it with all my pregnancies except my first because I didn't know. Have you ever been close to having a C-section? With my first, yes, they were very close to sending me back for a C-section, and that really shook me. So that is why I didn't want to repeat that experience. Now, of course, I'm acknowledging that there are real reasons to have a C-section. My daughter's birth was not. It was not a real reason to have a C-section. It was all because of all the things that went on with it. Thankfully, she ended up being right there, and so we didn't have to, but it was very close. I actually had to sign papers for it, like right before they were about to wheel me back, and then she was born. Favorite carriers for after the wrap stage? I really love the Kinder Pack. It's my favorite one. How do you space your babies? So far we haven't. It's just been breastfeeding. That's exclusively spaced our kids. My body's very responsive to that. I mean, once they start sleeping through the night, then babies come anyways, but usually not any sooner. So it's been really pretty easy. It's harder for people who have to make the decision when they get their periods back at, say, like 4 or 5 weeks. I know people like that. And so then they have to make am I going to have a baby every year? That has not been my experience. So I haven't really had to do anything because mine do space so naturally. I don't know what I would do if they came much closer, but they haven't came very close. Okay, baby wearing when pregnant, favorite reps, carriers, and if you stop at a certain point. So I have never baby worn while pregnant. My babies are a little more spaced. And I know a lot of people continue wearing their babies. I mean, Theo's not even 2 years old, and I haven't been wearing him for a really long time. Baby wearing for me is very much a like first 9 months thing. I wear them constantly for 6 months, and then 6 to 9, I start putting them on the floor some to start practicing their rocking back and forth and all of that. And then usually by about 9 months, I'm pretty well done with it. So I haven't been pregnant. My sister, she wears her babies a lot longer than me. And so she has worn hers during pregnancy. I guess at some point it would become really uncomfortable to do that, but I have not personally extended baby wearing. I think if the like whatever baby ends up being my last, I think I probably will. But usually at some point pregnancy happens, and then I don't even know where I would buckle that thing. Whew, sounds uncomfortable. Okay. Best thing to eat when you have food aversions? Anything that sounds good. It's even if it's unhealthy. So I don't know if I've shared that before, but I think I have. If I want and like everything else in the world sounds repulsive except like a spicy chicken fried sandwich, I'll go get it. Which with this pregnancy and I'm talking strictly first trimester. I don't have anything beyond the first trimester as far as food aversions and all of that. This pregnancy and probably the last like several, that really hasn't happened. I think the reason is just because it's very impractical. If I go get something that I really want because it's the only thing in the world that sounds good, then I have to, take all my kids, and I can't just be like, you guys can't have it. With my first couple, I definitely would go just get whatever sounded good. And then with this one, I stocked the house with a few things like just plain stuff, like plain bread, plain tortillas. Sometimes just like a plain tortilla with cheese in it will work. But I am one of those people where the first trimester is difficult. I mean, not it's difficult for everybody, but I'm one of those people who says it's difficult, so let's get through it. I'm not overly worried about perfect nutrition. For me, the food aversions end very quickly. So I will just eat whatever sounds good. Usually also pasta with just plain red sauce always sounds good for some reason. So I'll keep, white noodles and just plain red sauce, just those things that you feel like you could possibly eat. Not that they sound amazing, but just like that would actually work. I try to keep the house stocked with it. And then if you don't have very many kids and you can get away with just going to get whatever gets you through, then do that. But don't keep doing it. Just do it while you have to. For me, that's just the first trimester. I've never really experienced cravings outside of the first trimester. Do you still use cloth diapers? So I don't. I did cloth diapers for my first 5, and I was a very diligent, faithful cloth diaper. And it's in my current life season, it's not something that feels worth it or necessary. But at other times in my life, we're all in different seasons of life. It 100% did. I loved it. I did exclusively cloth diaper. I was even that mom who, if we went on vacation, I had to figure out where a laundromat was. It's like, why didn't you just bring a few disposables? But yeah, not currently. And I can't really see it happening anymore. Okay. Did you get stretch marks? So I have never had stretch marks. My legs are ruined from varicose veins, but stretch marks is not something that I deal with. It's not something I even do anything about. My mom didn't get stretch marks, and my sister doesn't have stretch marks. And then my other sister who just had a baby, I don't think she got them. So I think there's a genetic component to it. Okay. I'll answer one more. So, why home birth over natural in the hospital? Really want to, but the amenities after, like the bed. So, I have my house so comfortable. It's my home. And so I've just, over the last 15 years, I've poured myself into making it the most comfortable place on earth. And to me, there's no hospital that could match that. Now, I do feel that your better chances for a natural birth. Now, okay, I have noticed that the hospitals have come a long way. My younger sister just had her first baby, and her experience with the hospital was nothing like the last time I had a hospital birth, which was 13 years ago. So different. They had a queen size bed. I mean, mine was like a hospital bed. So I'm like, wait, what? The bed's comfortable? So I do know that the hospitals have come a long way. They also didn't push interventions on her. It seems like the environment has really shifted in the hospital, where doctors or OBs and midwives at the hospital are more willing to work with a natural birth plan than they were when I had my first 2 in the hospital. Seems to me that it's a totally different environment. So I do want to say that, because I feel that some of you are probably like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's the hospital experience. Nobody pushed any interventions on me. From my experience, that's not how it was. Now I see that things have come a long way, but getting in the car when you're in labor will be a difficult task. No matter how relaxed you are when you're at your house, whenever you get in that car, it's going to change things. So it might change the pattern of your contractions. It might change your ability to relax. I have heard it said that getting in the car during birth or during labor is the first intervention. And I do believe that. I feel that it's a challenge to, during this very difficult time, to get up and leave. And so you either need to leave a lot earlier, which means that you're going to be at the hospital and then you're going to sort of be on the clock, which again, my sister just recently had a hospital birth and they let her labor for so long. It took a long time. They didn't push anything on her. She felt like they almost didn't even check her enough, which I'm like, what in the world? Things have changed. So it's not necessarily, maybe depending on how natural birth friendly your hospital is, they might not push anything on you. Back in my day, when we were having babies, when you went to the hospital, that just meant you were just starting the whole intervention process. They were going to speed it up. You're on their time clock. So maybe that's changed. But I do still feel that getting in the car whenever I'm trying to relax and, just get through labor, relaxing my body, that to me is like, that's the deal breaker, is the getting in the car during that process. It's just so much easier to have my home set up, call the midwife, get her coming. She can leave her house. I am doing something very difficult and challenging. And so I'm going to stay at home. That's just my personal opinion. All right. Well, I don't know if I answered all of them, but I hope that you maybe, if you're a first-time mom and just hearing the perspective of a mom of 8, hopefully is helpful for you in some way. I don't create a ton of pregnancy content because mostly also I'm a type of person where there's so many strong opinions about stuff like this. And you get set in your ways and you have the things that work for you. And so we all have those. And so you might feel some pushback on some of the things I said. That's okay. There's a lot of ways to do this. This is my experience, and I'm really looking forward to sharing our birth story. I'm hoping and praying that it's another home birth, healthy home birth. And so we shall see. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And I will see you in the next episode of the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.